All right, good morning, everyone. Give continuation to the studies of the Medium's book. We are still on chapter 3 of part 1, which is methodology. Just to make sure that for those who are not here yesterday, what does Kardec means by methodology, the very first paragraph I like to read always declares what this chapter is all about. One very natural and praiseworthy desire that adherents have, and which should always be encouraged, is that of winning converts. To make the task easier, we will now intend to examine what we believe are the best, surest means to realize this objective without wasting any useless effort. So this very first paragraph tells everything what this chapter is all about. It's not a methodology of the practice of mediumship. I know most of us are itching to jump into methodology proper, myself included. But Kardec needs to guide us. And remember, Kardec was a teacher and was an educator of educators. And if we're going to talk about this doctrine, if we're going to talk about mediumship, which is this book is all about, we have to know how to approach people. And you have to somewhat read between the lines. What are the intention of these people that you're going to talk to? How much can we declare to them? How much can we open to them about this doctrine? Who are really interested? Who should we put our best effort and who we should just walk away from? It says over here, that's very important. Without wasting any useless effort. And paraphrase Jesus, do not throw pearls to pigs. That's exactly what Kardec's telling us here. I know most of us, as myself included again, want to talk about mediumship. But again, in order to talk about mediumship, you need to know how to deliver mediumship, and more important, of course, spiritism to others, and to whom would be interested and could benefit for what we have to offer. Because to talk to people that will not benefit from it, it is indeed a waste of useless effort, and perhaps may even cause more harm than good. And just to recap what I've spoken of so far, that breaks down the various classes of people that we face when we're going to discuss the doctrine. And we start with the materialist. But materialist is, by definition, someone who does not believe in any spiritual matters. Everything is physical, everything is matter. All of our emotions, all our thoughts, all of our sentiments, all of our ideas, everything has a material genesis, and there is nothing beyond that. So in other words, everything is the brain. There is nothing outside of the brain that is not outside of the constitution of this physical body. And once this physical body ceases to function, then you enter into, well, we not, because then there is nothingness. I can even say that we enter into nothingness because we cease to exist, basically. And he breaks down the materialists in basically three categories. And the first one is the one that he would call the theoretical. And the theoretical is the ones that they don't need anything else. They don't have a void. They have the space filled out, or so they declare. if some may not believe it. But they are not looking for anything. They know that there is nothing, absolutely nothing outside of matter. They don't need to fill a void. They are not questioning anything. So those individuals can really talk to them because they don't need anything. They got everything they need. They're not looking for anything. And it's very hard to present something to someone who's not looking for anything. Right? Then you have the materialists who are actually seeking to understand something. And they have a little void. Problem is everything as presented to them clashes with reason. Everything presented to them creates a fear that if follow that path, they will be radicalized. They will become parts of a sect, and they will have to start following and believing in dogmas that science proves to be, improves is a good word, okay? Is a very important word. Not truthful, and they will reject those things. But they do have a void. They are actually trying to understand things. They're questioning things. Unlikely the first one, the theoretical, they don't question anything. To those, we could provide some answers. Spiritism will provide some answers. That could fill that void. It may not necessarily do so. They perhaps may need to continue searching. Perhaps they will find that void in some other things, some Hinduism, in Buddhism, but they are actually looking for something that transcends matter. Not find anything, they continue being materialists. And then he's talk about the misguided uh, spiritualists, not spiritists, but spiritualists. Those also have no void. They already fill that void with misguided information. Those are perhaps the harder ones to talk to, because these ones we're going to have to remove something and replace what, of course, we are biased, but we believe to be the truth, right? We are going to have those are the hardest to talk to because they are very often radicalized. They're very often very close to anything that clashes with whatever has been given to them. So they may, as an example, say, do not talk to the dead. That's what Moses told them. I will follow that to death, and anything that contradicts this dogma, I cannot accept. Anything that contradicts this dogma, do not talk to the dead, is work of the devil, so to say. Those are the hardest one to talk with because, again, they have no void. That space that was for curiosity, that space was for to explore the truth about our spiritual nature had already been filled. Naturally, again, we are biased. We believe that eventually they will start questioning those dogmas themselves, and then they will move upwards from the misguide to the second class, ones who are now looking for some answers that the previous dogmas, the previous information no longer fulfills their questions, no longer answer their questions any longer. And Kardec moves a jump from the materialists to disbelievers. Now it's different. The disbeliever is almost the ones that is being rejecting the idea because one of them say last 24 cowardice, because it may clash with the social styles, because it will force them to change something about themselves, and making change is extremely hard. We all know that. And eventually, starting at 27, item 27, it does even a bigger jump that we can going to get there. Last time we stopped at 25, and but 26 should start 26. 26 is basically a continuation of 25. So I think we need to read 25. And 26 together. Okay, Zoraida?
Okay, gotcha. 25. Let us not forget a category that we shall call disbelievers out of deception. It includes those who have gone from being exaggeratedly confident to disbelief because they have suffered deception. Thus, being disheartened, they have abandoned and rejected everything. They are like those who deny Spiritism in good faith because they feel they have been misled. This is nonetheless the result of both an incomplete study of Spiritism and a lack of experience. If there are those who deceived by spirits, it is usually because they ask them improper questions or ones that they cannot answer, or because they are not enlightened enough to distinguish truth from error. Also, many people only see Spiritism as a new form of divinization and think that spirits exist for the purposes of fortune telling. In fact, frivolous and mocking spirits do not waste the opportunity to entertain themselves at these individuals' expense. Thus, they promise girls that they will find marriage and assure the ambitious that they will receive honors, inheritances, and hidden treasures, and so on and so forth. The result, the frequent and unpleasant deceptions that serious and prudent persons always know how to avoid. Number 26, the most numerous of all classes, but which cannot be included among the class of opponents, consist of hesitant individuals who are usually spiritualists out of principle. Most of them have a vague intuition about spiritual ideas, and they aspire towards something that they are not quite able to define. They only need to coordinate and formulate their thoughts. Spiritism appears to them like a... Okay. Spiritism appears to them like a ray of light, the clarity that dissipates the fog. Consequently, they avidly embrace it, for it sets them free from the anguish of uncertainty.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So this is somewhat of a jump of the types of individuals that we find. On 25 individuals who had actually experienced not only spiritualism, but spiritism. But unfortunately, they allowed themselves to be deceived. They are pretty much victims, first of themselves, for not make use of the most greatest gift God gives us is our intelligence, an ability to use reason. They become victimized by mocking spirits. They become victimized by charlatanism, of course, in this case, mostly incarnated spirits, right? And because they jump in with all the emotions and with none of the intellectual abilities, they become victims first of themselves and then of those spirits who are there ready for having some fun, and most important, those who do not want the doctrine to progress. And out of deception, when the spirits promised that the young girl would marry the guy of her dreams, and that does not happen, and then they think now it's the fault of the spirits lying to them, and they start to disbelieve everything or any kind of nonsense of that sort. And then on 26, Kardec speaks of the most numerous class, but which cannot be included among the class of opponents, consists of hesitant individuals, who are usually spiritualists out of principle. Why is it the most numerous? There has to be a reason Kardec puts that. And if we go back to Gospel according to Spiritism, there is a part that speaks of the innate faith, that it is in our nature to have the awareness of the divinity, of the extra physical. It is in our nature, since it's being printed, that's what separates us from animalia, that you have this awareness of the divinity, that we understand that something greater than just about this physical body, about this brain. We had to do a very hard work in order to bypass this innate faith within us. But it's there because it's part of us. So therefore it should be the most numerous, and would not accept the idea that God gave this to some and not to others. Everyone, God delivers equally to everyone because God loves everyone equally. But give to us also the intelligence and the free will, and with the combination of misuse of both, we block this natural awareness of us. But you can't block it continuously forever. Eventually we start to look for some answers, and therefore most of us belong to this group. Some of us find and follow, and some of us follow, and again, number 25 tells us clearly someone's find but misuse it, or misuse the intelligence and the free will and get in trouble, and then chooses to abandon it instead of to redirect the intelligence and the free will to reorient oneself. And it's really oneself. We can offer what you have to offer, but individuals have to do their own part. And especially these days with the advancement of technology, that unfortunately is a wonderful thing. First of all, it's beautiful, but it can be misused, and unfortunately people start to follow the most ridiculous paths that people are throwing out there, that we are creating this fanaticism and radicalism towards things that cannot even be conceived. As an example, now there is a theory that viruses do not exist. That is an invention of those who wants to control us. That, as an example, COVID was not caused by a virus, but was something else. And the number of individuals who are following that trend of ridiculous thought is amazing. People just buying on those things. But the misuse of technology leads to these problems. But again, it's a wonderful thing when used properly. Those individuals that are now looking for something, they stop fighting against our nature. They do hesitate because the exterior presentation of this divinity, what comes from the outside to the inside, clashes with the inside, clashes with reason, clashes with this natural perception of this extra physical, extra material. And of course, we would hesitate in the beginning. And when you find a doctrine, and again, for those who are truly looking, a doctrine that no longer clashes with anything, no longer demands that you accept dogmas without reasoning, it does come as a ray of light. I would think that Kardec himself would be an example of this group of people. At one point, perhaps was hesitant when he was being invited to participate in the many seances. He would say, "I don't have time for this. I mean, I'm intellectual individual. I'm not going to give in to little plays." But once he had the opportunity to experience and observe it, he could not deny reason, and that innate understanding or awareness of the divinity, of the spiritual, was completely opened because he had no bias. He had nothing holding him back. He was a free thinker. He was allowed to think for himself and not being held by atavisms, not being held by dogmas, and brought to us everything else. And there are men like us like that are looking for something, but we are hesitant. We are not. We are like the new spiritualists that the Indian guru says that they go into the boat, but they make sure that the boat is tied to a tree on land, so they won't go too far because they are hesitant to let go of that cord and embrace truly spiritualism. They are hesitant. They fear to be in many ways an outcast, that will become again followers of dogmas, followers of radical believers. So they keep one foot on land and one foot on water. But with having one is provide to them reasoning, provide them an intelligent thought process, now they will be more like to let go of that cord and embracing spirituality at full. Question, comments? All right, 28:7.
Okay. If we now take a look at the various categories of believers, we will first discover those who are spiritists without realizing it. Properly speaking, these are a variety of or nuances of the preceding class. Even though they have never heard of the Spiritist doctrine per se, they have an innate sentiment about the grand principles that result from it. And this sentiment is reflected in certain passages of their writings and discourses to the extent that if you listen to them, you would believe that they were true initiates. Many examples of these individuals can be found among sacred and secular writers alike, and among poets, orators, moralists, and ancient and modern philosophers.
Thank you. Well, that's the big jump. You see how Kardec builds, come down from the materialists, what theoretical, they don't need anything, they know everything already, it's absolutely not beyond matter, and go losing map on those materialism, going to the disbelievers, that is now different, and now that's a huge jump. Now it's talking about believers. And more than believers in spiritualism, he is really believes in spiritism. Spiritism. And that is a huge, huge jump, right? Kardec went from absolutely theoretical materialists and now to individuals who actually believe in spiritism when they discover it. But the very one now is the ones that do not realize it yet. Is the spiritist that has already gained that belief, that understanding of what the doctrine is all about, that our existence here has to be meaningful, that it doesn't make sense if everything ends with the death of the physical body, that there are other things beyond the physical, and all the teachings of spiritualism, when they read it, makes completely sense to them. Dr. Bezerra de Menezes was a Catholic. Sorry about this. And one time he was by the train station waiting to get the train to go home from work. He was in the suburbs of Rio. And somebody gave him the Spirit's book somehow. Since he had nothing else to do, he got to sit on the train and read that book and nothing else to read, and be, as one would expected, open-minded, because most people, of all the religions say, "Oh, I'm not touching that book." No, he took the book and almost read the whole book on the ride home. And once he got at his station, and got off the train, he said, "I was a spiritist my entire life and did not know it." Because all the contents of that book made complete sense for him. It was absolutely natural for him that things was as described in that book. And when we hear some songs out there, some lyrics, when you see some movies, when you read some books, we can't help but think that, is this author, is this songwriter, is the director of this movie spiritist? Did they read the works of Kardec? Did they read some of those books of complementary books of the doctrine? Because we identify in those lyrics, we identify in those movies, on those books, things that are absolutely compatible and what is being thought in spiritism. Because obviously there is just one truth. And this truth may be presented in many, many different ways. And for those individuals who are not bound, again, by atavism, who are not incarcerated inside of dogmas, they will express those truths, and of course they have some understanding of it. And we see that in many, many books. We see that in Socrates. Just read some Pythagoras the other day, and it's amazing what Pythagoras was a spiritist. Socrates, of course, we all know, was a spiritist, right? When you read the prophet, Khalil Gibran, you have questions in this guy. Is a spiritist, right? And so many examples that we have out there. Because again, it is just one truth. When we seek the truth and we develop, we are free-minded, we have means to express what you have conquered. That truth is common to all. It may be expressed in many different ways. If you read a little bit of Confucius, you question, was this guy a spiritist? Although he believed in the divinity, believed that there is a soul, basically, he would say, let's not worry about that now because you are here now. Let's live the most moral and ethical life as possible. Then when we get over there, things will fall into place. If you do what's right here now, you don't have to worry about the extra physical for now, which does not go against what Spiritism teaches. The scientific part of the doctrine goes into the extra physical, how is life in the spiritual world, and more in the scientific aspect. But the moral teachings is for the application here now. It's how we correlate with one another. It's how we make use of the opportunities given to us. So here and now, if you live our lives thinking of the future, we waste the present. So it does not clash with Confucius at all. And again, the scientific aspect, the doctrine explores the extra-physical, but the philosophical and the moral part of the doctrine is for here and now, really. Because if you do good here, the extra phys is guaranteed to be good by the natural law of cause and consequence. Comments, questions? Now starting on 28, you will talk to us about different kind of spiritists, and it's very interesting. I think it's a good exercise. Let's see where do we fit ourselves, but always with a positive criticism, always with as a learning tool of how can I do better, how can move up, maybe a half step, a quarter of a step, whatever we are able to do. But make sure that we do not use this as something to be negative to us. It's something that it's meant, again, to be a tool to help us to make ourselves better. And 0.0001 better is better than stay where we are right now. And here we're talking about, go ahead and say the types of spiritists, the experimental, imperfect, Christians, fanatical. And it's amazing how Kardec could describe all this group of individuals in a short period of time. He was basically creating a doctrine for us here. And he had already the ability of break down us, of course, for teaching purpose only, where many spiritists will find themselves. So, questions, comment? Let's go into 28.
Okay. Number 28. Among those who have become convinced by directly studying the subject, we may distinguish, number one, those who believe purely and simply in the manifestations, who consider Spiritism to be a simple science of observation that demonstrates a series of more or less curious phenomena. We call them experimental spiritists.
Thanks. Now, Kardec says over here, among those who have become convinced by directly studying the subject. Not one who heard from someone else, not one who went to enter into a science section and observe the phenomenon. The one who actually have a direct interaction with the doctrine, with primarily reading books, reading his magazines and stuff like that. Naturally, have not understood the doctrine, but have a direct contact to them. Not all of course. And the first one that I called experimental, to me, it's just like a first step. You know, it's like meeting someone and you have that very first impression that is always physical. You know, handsome, pretty, not so chubby, not too skinny, whatever. Not first impressions, that physical that we see on anyone is extremely superficial. Extremely superficial. Problem is, those experimental will stay on the superficial. You will stick to the very first impression and this does not go beyond. Do not get to know that person, do not go to understand the person outside of the physical appearance, so to say. It's just an example, please. But I think it's extremely common that most of us will go to that very first step. I mean, no one jumps from the first to the second step. Usually we don't. Who among us would have the ability of Bezerra de Menezes to pick up the book, read almost the whole book on a ride home and say, whoa, I was a spiritist my entire life and not know it, and go beyond the phenomena, go beyond what can be seen, can be experienced by our physical senses, by seeing the phenomenon, by witness with physical eyes and physical ears, the phenomenon. Go beyond that. It's not just the first impression, because the first impression will fade away. Just as in the physical perception, as eventually you get tired of it. When at one point in every block of Paris there was a seance going on and everybody was witnessing the phenomena, where are they now? Where are those seances? Where are those who went to entertain themselves with the phenomena? Where are they now? It fades away. You get tired of it if you don't move beyond that first step. And those are the experimental spiritists. They stay there. They not move on. Number 2, if no questions.
Okay. Number 2, those who see in Spiritism more than just the phenomenon, who understand Spiritism's philosophical aspect, they believe in the morality that results from it, but they fail to practice it, and the doctrine's actual influence upon their characters is thus insignificant or none at all. They do not change their habits, nor would they deprive themselves of one single pleasure. Misers remain miserly, the proud remain full of themselves, the envious and jealous remain aggressive. They see Christian charity as nothing more than a pretty maxim. They are imperfect spiritists.
We cannot make a tremendous differentiation between the imperfect spiritist and the imperfect Christians, right? Since a Christian and a spiritist is one of the and the same, and a spiritist is a Christian. Well, not all Christians are spiritists, of course. The one that Kardec calls the imperfect spiritist went one step above of the first step of the experiment spiritist. They know the doctrine is more than phenomenon. The phenomena is only a tool to bring us to the second level. It's just a tool to make us understand that the true reason for this doctrine to exist is to bring us moral teachings to propagate us to evolve morally. The imperfect spiritist understands that, agree with that, just is not able to practice it. So the ones who coming in and knows that we need to follow teachings Christ and stop being selfish, but we can't stop being selfish. We have to stop being proudful, but we don't free ourselves or don't put the best effort to free ourselves of pride. Those are what Kardec calls the imperfect spiritists. And to me, it's pretty much the imperfect Christians, who, of any denomination, Protestants, Orthodox, Catholic, Roman Catholics, admires, believes, agrees with all the teachings of Christ, but not able to practice. And that's why Jesus invited the young man to say, you come to me and ask me how to reach eternal life, and I'm telling you, follow the commandments. Oh, I do them, all 10 of them. Okay. So give up all your things and follow me now. And then it's hard. I agree with you, Jesus. Your doctrine is wonderful. The 10 Commandments of Moses is really the commandments, the tools that you should follow to reach eternal life. But wait a minute. Free myself of my greed, free myself of my jealousy, free myself of my pride. That is a little bit hard right now. And those are us, the imperfect spiritists, the imperfect Christians. Questions? Comment? Okay, number 3 then.
Okay. Those who are not content with only admiring spiritist morality, but who practice it and accept all its consequences, since they are convinced that earthly existence is only a temporary trial, they try to take advantage of such a brief moment to advance on the path of progress, the only one that can lead them to a higher position in the spirit world, endeavoring to do.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
You put it on my own book.
Endeavoring to do good and subdue their evil tendencies. Friendship with them is always safe, for their firmness of conviction keeps them from all thoughts of evil. Charity is the rule of conduct among them. These are true spiritists, or better still, Christian spiritists.
Do you see how Kardec builds up on this pathway of progress of the spiritists, right? It's a matter of steps. There is no condemnation here. There is no pointing fingers. There is the law of progress through exercise our intelligence and our free will, through going into the divine laws that is already imprinted in our conscience, and let that conscience guide us in a way that we use our free will, in a way that we use our intelligence, right? And again, the first step, experiment, the physical attraction, the phenomena. It's wonderful. It's nice to see spirits showing up themselves and levitations and disappearing things, making objects disappear and appear somewhere else. How interesting that is. Yes, no one denied, but do we limit ourselves to that? No, we need to go to the second step. The second step, we start to understand that it's not about the phenomenon, it's about moral conquest. But we cannot move beyond appreciating it and believing in it, being in awe to it, but not moving in direction of changing ourselves. Then we have the imperfect spiritists, there is the Semitics, in my opinion, as imperfect Christians. And then you move to number 3, the third class, what Kardec call here the Christians, the spiritists. And I have to open a parenthesis that is an expression that Kardec uses here, but it's not correct when we say, I'm Christian spiritist. It's redundant. If you're a spiritist, you're a Christian. There is no way to separate that. They invented this stupidity, in my opinion, to try to separate them, the spiritism from all the spiritualists, especially spiritualists that practice mediumship. To me, there is a degree of elitism in it. There is a degree of pride in it. And to me, it's just not right. So we are spiritist, period. If you are a spiritist, you are a Christian. You may be imperfect, but still spiritist. There is no need to use this association, Christian spiritist. Kardec use here, as we can see here, because they are putting the best effort of transforming oneself. Now we move beyond just admiring the beauty of the moral teachings, but seek to apply those moral teachings in our lives. And again, if you just are able to apply 0.00001% of it, it's better than not applying at all. But with the effort to transform it to 0.00002% and continue trying to make that progress, eventually to reach a level in which that we understand charity is the rule of conduct. And it is interesting that the friendship with them is always safe, because the idea of betrayal, the idea of trying to explore someone is beyond those individuals already. We have moved on a step of honesty becomes a part of the Christian spiritists. Perfect, far from perfection yet. I think for most of us it's a goal and a reject to reach, right? Understand again that we're not going to become Mother Teresa in one incarnation. We're not going to become Dr. Bezerra de Menezes in one incarnation. We're not going to become Gandhi, Buddha in one incarnation. It's a process. We just need to put the best effort to stay in that process, to not deviate from that.
I'll have a comment. I think
Please.
it's a good thing that, I mean, we all practice, we're Christian spiritism. They said, like I said, is maybe a necessary term, but we get a lot of adherence from the Catholic Church, which mistake the religion for what we teach. And I think it's a good thing that once they fall into spiritism, they realize that the precepts or the tenets of Christianity, because it's charity, it's embedded in spiritism and we follow Christ. But in many ways, we get people in spiritism that are disheartened by the Catholic Church. And because Christianity is so embedded in that, the ritual, and it's part of what they follow, they discovered, that a new sort of revise, I say, Christianity, right? Because we really follow charity and we want to do good to people. So I think the idea of Christianity and Spiritism, although it's interrelated and there's no way to separate, the terminology would get some people probably discouraged to join or to even give it a chance, I think.
So you are telling that you agree that we should call ourselves Christian spiritists?
No, I feel like it's a oxymoron almost.
It is. That's exactly what I'm saying. I totally agree with you.
I was watching the other day the president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation in a congress in Brazil, and he claimed that we should call ourselves Christian Spiritists because of the many distortions that are happening in Brazil with so-called Kardecicism and the other things, deviations. I don't fully agree with him. I agree with you guys that I think you can scare more than help to call Christian Spiritists, because you are kind of putting yourself in a box. But I understand his concept there. It's a situation in Brazil, and I think that he has his reasons. He's a very wise person, so I respect his opinion, and I think that he has his reason to ask Spiritists in Brazil to call themselves Christian Spiritists. Just a side note here. Not that I don't necessarily agree with him. I just respect his opinion, and I understand.
Yeah, well, we respect everyone. We are able to agree and disagree. You can disagree even from Jesus, because we have the free will and intelligence, misuse, perhaps. But to me, it's for someone who is studying the doctrine from the best of intention, and I think it's very misguided to call Christian Spiritism, because if I say there is Christian Spiritism, I'm open to the question, what are the other kind of Spiritists? Where are the non-Christian Spiritists? And that becomes a problem, because there is no non-Christian Spiritist. Are there non-Christian spiritualists? Yes. There is a lot of people who are spiritualists, who practice mediumship and are not Christians. But once you say Spiritist, you are automatically declaring to be Christian. And I think to go into declaring ourselves Christian Spiritism is to open a can of worms that's just plain wrong, in my opinion.
In this explanation, Kardec talks about Paul of Tarsus in this note 1, Paul of Tarsus, that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, right? Communication by Paul of Tarsus. That's how he explains the nomenclature. He was trying to move away from the Kardecist Spiritism, which is something that is very common used in Brazil, which is also redundancy, right? Because there is no other Spiritist. The Spiritism is from Kardec. But in Brazil, if you talk to someone that is not a Spiritist and you say that you are Spiritist, they put you in a basket with all the spiritualist different beliefs that exist in Brazil, right? So that's why people chose to say that they are Spiritist Kardecists, right? Which is also doesn't make any sense. But anyways, I think it's in the end is his word, and I agree with you that here in the US we shouldn't be using Christian Spiritists. We should just say Spiritist, and to say Spiritist, we already have to explain what is that. So that's.
Yeah, I don't think we should ban knowledge because of ignorance of others. He in America or in part of the world, completely against bending truth and reason to accommodate ignorance. Number 4.
Okay. Finally, there are fanatical Spiritists. The human species would be perfect if it always preferred the good side of things. Exaggeration in any way is harmful, and if Spiritism It provides a blind and often childish confidence in the manifestations of the invisible world, leading some very easily and uncontrollably to accept what reflection and examination will show to be absurd or impossible. Fanaticism does not think, it dazzles. These adherents are more noxious than useful to Spiritism's cause. They are less capable of being convincing since their judgment is rightly distrusted. They are easily fooled by fraudulent spirits or by persons who try to exploit their gullibility. If they were the only ones who had to suffer the consequences, the harm would not be so great. But the worst outcome is that, without meaning to do so, they provide disbelievers with more reasons to ridicule Spiritism than to be convinced by it. And they do not fail to impute to all the foolishness of a few. Obviously, this is neither fair nor rational, but it is well known that Spiritism's adversaries only recognize their own reason as genuine and care little about fully understanding the object of their consideration.
One of the things that I always like to mention, outside of real love, that cannot be in any way quantified, and if it's pure, it's already qualified. Just about everything else, at least that I can think of, there is a range of normal, can be considered normal and good. And when you go outside of that range, that very often it's not one straight line, but it's a value that goes from X to Y, not just X, but goes from X to Y. When you go outside of this, what can be considered normal, that being considered good, of course, you're gonna fall into the abnormal or the paranormal or those being not good anymore. Examples in nature, the electrolytes in our blood has a level of normal. Let's say the amount of sodium in the bloodstream it's not one number. It's not 130, right? It's not 135. It's a range. And its range goes from 128, depends on the lab, to say to 137, okay? And we live inside of that number, you're good. And that goes for blood pressure, there's a range of what is a good number, so, and how much you work, how many hours do you work in a day, how many hours you devote to your job. Is it 8 hours? Is it 12 hours? But there's a range of what is normal and it's good. Once you go up beyond that, it may becomes excessive and therefore no good. And if you go below that, it becomes not enough and therefore also not good. And that goes for most things. And when you're talking about the fanatical spiritists, I put that pretty much with going back to the very first one, the experimental there, that it somehow went above the experimental, but not too far from it. Because if it had embraced the moral teachings, those moral teachings would themselves protect us from getting into this fanatical state. It is someone who somehow finds a way to ignore, the bypass the moral values of the doctrine, the true value of the doctrine. And by doing so, become more, well, first for themselves, become something very dangerous to themselves. But in consequence, it becomes harmful to the doctrine itself. Fanaticism is not good in any circumstances. I can't imagine in any aspect of our life that being a fanatical would be beneficial to anyone, individual and collective. And this is what Kardec's telling us here. Those individuals, in reality, they act in contrary to the teachings of the doctrine. That the first thing, if spiritualism does not condemn anything, does not demand anything, but if spiritualism would say that demands anything, if we could say that spiritualism demands anything, that thing, in my opinion, would say, make use of reason. Be reasonable, be intelligent. If you don't, you do that, it may lead to fanaticism. And individuals who become sort of fanatical, who jumps into the most ridiculous idea, or they are being obsessed. And the obsessed may be something that we don't believe is an expression out of obsession, and you're obsessing yourself, which is, again, to me, it does not exist. Okay. Or you're being obsessed, really obsessed by all the spirits who are controlling you and making you follow the most ridiculous theories and ideas out there, and then you say, oh, spiritism teach that, spiritism says that. A complete misinterpretation of the books of the codification. And the worst of it is that, especially nowadays, again, with the use of technology and the media out there, individuals start to write down all those crazy theories, and unfortunately, the misguided ones, the ones who bypass the true value of spiritism with its moral teachings, it starts to embrace those crazy, stupid ideas that it is out there. Exaggeration. Exaggeration is not good. Exaggeration is going to go outside of that we call normal, right? I mean, I like my coffee sweetened, but so in 1 cup of coffee, are you going to put 16 spoons of sugar? It's an exaggeration. The coffee will not taste good. You may like it sweet, but in general, you're not gonna like a cup of coffee with 16 spoons of sugar. And if you do, you better check yourself. But if you like a coffee sweetened, you're not gonna take it with no sugar also. If you're diabetic, then of course with a sweetener. Because there is a level, there is an upper normal and a lower normal, and when you decide that, we're good. I like my coffee with a little touch of sweetener, or let my touch with a little bit more of the sweet side, but not 16 spoons in 1 cup. It becomes excessive. And if you do that, as an example of the sugar to anything in our lives, chances are they're being cause harm to ourselves. And when you deal with a doctrine like that, when you do this harm to ourselves, we are causing severe harm to the doctrine. We are causing severe harm to everyone else. And that falls in our previous discussion, in which now you need to find the reason to justify the ignorance of others. You have to accommodate the ignorance of others. Now we have a doctrine over here. We have books over here. We're interested, the books are there. We're interested in a truthful conversation, not that we know more than others, but at least to seek to have fidelity to this doctrine. And we seek to stay inside of what we can consider to be normal, in the practice of this doctrine with the best of our abilities, of course. Once you go outside of that, you become fanatical. When you go excessive, you become fanatical. And once you become fanatical, we lose ability of reason. You become prey, easy prey to those who seek to obsess us, incarnate and discarnate. And nowadays have to be very careful with the incarnate obsessors making use of technology. Any comments, any questions? All right, so I think it's 29 now.
The means of conviction vary considerably among individuals, and what persuades some will have no impression on others. Even though one person may be convinced by certain physical manifestations and another by intelligent communications, most are persuaded by reasoning. We could even say that for most of those who still cannot appreciate Spiritism through reason, the physical phenomenon will have little impact. The more extraordinary the phenomenon in the way they seem to depart substantially from known laws, the more opposition they encounter. And for a very simple reason, we are naturally led to doubt anything that is not sanctioned by reason. All will consider them from their own point of view and offer their own individual explanation. The materialist attributes to them a purely physical cause or a hoax, the ignorant or superstitious person to a diabolical or supernatural cause. However, an explanation that is prepared beforehand has the effect of destroying preconceived ideas and showing at least the possibility, if not the entire reality of the fact, which is thus comprehended before it is seen. So, by accepting the possibility of a fact, 3/4 of the conviction has been realized.
Thanks. Sorry, there's an alarm going on outside. Do you know? I don't know if you guys can hear it.
Okay.
All of us carry our biases. All of us carry our atavism, the ideas, the beliefs that you bring as a spirit who has had many other experiences in many of the different reincarnations. Those are our atavisms. We all had experiences with different, some of us doctrines, and the doctrine may be materialist. Again, it's theoretical materialism, right? So of course, with this huge package of informations, of beliefs, of atavism that each one of us have, the means of convincing, the means of imprinting ideas individuals, or the individuals will vary considerably. The way to provide some impressions of what you have to offer to individuals will vary considerably because of all those things that we carry with us. There is a sense of self-defense, I believe. When Kardec says, the more extraordinary the phenomena, in the way they seem to depart substantially from the known laws, the more opposition they encounter, and for the very simple reason, we are naturally led to doubt anything that is not sanctioned by reason. Again, we are naturally led to doubt anything that is not sanctioned by reason. And I think that's where a sense of self-defense, of survival skills come into action, actually. When things are presented to us in such a extraordinary way, we have a tendency to not take it. Therefore, when you present spiritual to others, if you jump straight into the phenomena, and we're talking about, let's say, the physical phenomena, the levitations, that the spirits can make a incarnate human being to float in the air, it will cause more rejection, it will cause more fear, it will cause more sense of ridicule than anything else. It's a big jump. Because that tells us here, don't make using of the extraordinary, and it is extraordinary, a levitation. It's not ordinary that people just float in the air. Okay, people just go flying out of one window and come back to the other, from some mediums of physical phenomena able to perform. You thought that someone from the beginning of the conversation about spirituals will create more fear, that sense of self-defense, that natural ability of not taking anything that is sanctioned by reason, because you cannot reason that. With the help of the spirits, the guy just start to levitate, get out of the room on the third floor of a building and came back to another window. Oh boy, who's gonna take that without first to be, being introduced properly to the doctrine, perhaps reading these books like this before they will accept the idea of someone levitating and flying out of a window. Like in everything else, first we have to do the theory. If you know, for anyone who spend any time in warming up school benches, first we do the theories. In chemistry, you do the theory before you go into the lab and you do experiment. In physics, when you start driving a car and you sit in front of the wheel, you have some theoretical teachings before. What do you do here? How do you use your feet? And then after you have understand that in a theoretical means, then you'll be able to practice. Otherwise, you'll be a disaster waiting for you. And the way to introduce spiritism would be the theoretical first as well. Let's talk about the Kardec idea. Don't jump into spirits right away. No, don't start with there is something more than the physical. What is this thing? Okay, let's go step by step. And then we come to the idea that the concept of perispirit, the concept that spirits having that perispirit can utilize some dense matter that we call ectoplasm, and with that dense matter called the ectoplasm, they are able to coat physical bodies and make those physical bodies fluctuate and leave one window and come back to another. In this series of step by step, coming to the theoretical from the very beginning and building up, building up, building up, building up. Eventually, a person will accept the idea that a human being could float in the air, leave one window, come back through another. But if you start from that point, you lost that individual right then and there. Comments, questions? Can do one more.
Number 30. Will it be of any use at all to try to convince obstinate disbelievers? We have already stated that this will depend on the causes and nature of their disbelief. Our insistence in trying to persuade them often leads them to believe in their own self-importance, which in turn leads them to be even more obstinate. Those who are neither convinced by reasoning nor phenomenon still have the trial of disbelief to endure, and we must leave to Providence the task of leading them onto the path of more favorable circumstances. There are too many other people who desire to receive the light for us to waste our time on those who reject it. Therefore, direct your efforts toward those of goodwill, who are greater in number than you might think. Your example will overcome any resistance more easily than will mere words. True spiritists never lack an opportunity to do good, afflicted hearts to relief, consolation to offer, desperate emotions to calm, moral reforms to instill. This is their mission, wherein they will find true satisfaction. Spiritism pervades the atmosphere. It is expanding because of the very force of circumstances and because it enables those who profess it to be happy. When its theoretic adversaries hear it resounding all around them, even among their own friends, they will come to grips with their isolation and will be forced either to fall silent or surrender.
Thanks. Pelec went through all the disbelievers, starting with the materialists and then the disbelievers. Is there a way to convince them, to convert them into disbelievers, or to convert first the materialists into spiritualists, not necessarily spiritists, and then to get those who are already spiritualists, there would be the disbelievers, to become spiritists. And he already said it was here, we have already stated, this will depend on the cause and nature of disbelief. What makes one individual reject, or not even reject, not open themselves to spiritism? Because you can't reject anything that are not being exposed to, right? You have to be exposed first and reject later. And for those who had been exposed and rejected, and we saw the example of the coward, the one who's being misled, because that cover everything here, how to bring them back. One is to not try too hard. I have to admit that one of the most stupid things I've done in my life is that at one point, I was convinced that cigarette smoking was really a bad thing. But the excess of individuals around me bothered me that I have to stop smoking, delayed my stop smoking. It was such a persistent barrage of accusations and point fingers that we have to stop smoking. I said, I don't have to do anything. I do it pride, nothing but pride. I do whatever I want. If I want to kill myself with cigarettes, I can do so. Nothing but pride. Nothing but denying the obvious, not by denying our own ability to reason. But if you persist that so much, we can cause that to others. The pride will let them off. I am the, my own, as Kardec put here, leads them to believe in their own self-importance, which in turn leads them to be even more obstinate. we start pushing those individuals to agree with you so much that now they're going to disagree with you because now they find themselves to become very important. If everybody is giving them so much importance, if everybody is making them so valuable, they want to convince them of something, the more I hold on to my ideas, even if deep inside reason had already led me to agree with them. I'm not going to agree because they have become too important to them when I do not agree with them. Maybe if now I start agreeing with them, I lose importance. They already got what they want. That was to convert me, and now they were going to go to convert someone else. And that's not right because I am too important. And that's one of the aspects of give them the space. Here, that's what I have to present to you. I know you are able to reason on it. Think about it. If you care, the door is open. Come and join us. Walk away. That's it. You know, shake the sandal of the sandal of the sandal and move on. You know, the instruction of Jesus to the disciples, right? Do not throw pearls to pigs. If someone continue to reject, is close to it, why should we continue trying? And more important, what really makes the difference is our example, is how we live our life. How do we apply the doctrine in our lives? Not participating in leadership meetings, not going to the studies every day, not memorizing every single page of all the books and being able to quote the books of the codification, many of the complementary books, but how you apply them in our lives. Inside of our limitations, of course, but not being limited by our limitations, as we like to say here. Example, like Chico Xavier. We know and you have read of many individuals who have, what's the word, gave him to Spiritism because of example of Chico Xavier. The guy was able to live the life that he lived. He was be able to do so much with so little. What is it about this doctrine? We had a case many years ago of one girl who came into the Spiritism because of the death of her brother on a bicycle, young, health guy who died. And the whole family was in an absolutely emotional chaos. Everybody was completely distorted except for the mother, who was completely together and, of course, having the melancholy of losing a son, of course, but completely put together without any sign of distress or rebelliousness at all. And this girl questioned, what is it? And then she came to the realization that because the mother was in Spiritist, and she thought herself, if Spiritist does that to my mom, the mother who lost her son, a young son, there gotta be something good into it. And she became a Spiritist because of it. So our example in how we live our life, how we apply the true value of this doctrine, which again is the moral teachings, is the best tool to convert individuals. Example, definitely a lot more important than words. And I think we can stop here. Actually, we have to stop here. Any more comment? If not, Carol, can do our final prayer, please?
No, Elmo, wait, this section of the book is so great, touches me so much because even though I've read this before, it's one of those things where you read it over and over again, and you gather more and more, and it's even better with your assistance in understanding. like, I don't know, just the idea of just simply the idea that gets reasoning will get you 75% of the way there. When for a true belief in something, where I used to think, well, gee, why don't the spirits continue to do knocking on the tables and lifting them up and flying them around the room? And people would still have doubts with that, and it doesn't bring them in fully. You don't get the fish in the boat with that, and whereas the getting someone to reason it out does land the fish, and it's a great section of the book.
Yeah, I think so too. As much as we want to jump into the mediumship proper, we have to have this theory before we jump into the lab and experimental things of it. And we see here that, and you were telling to us about exactly this process of moving step by step toward getting attracted by the physical, so to say, right? The experimental, the seeing the phenomenon, the noises and everything else, and then discover that that is just the introduction, that it's just the physical attraction, so to say, that beyond that there is a lot more depth, and that is the real important part of the doctrine, is beyond that. And that's what will hold people on. You say, bring the fish into the boat, yes. Now hold on to that fish and make that fish wants to stay there. That is the depth of the doctrine. Thanks, everyone. Carol, please.
Yeah.
Next Sunday,
Oh,
sorry, Carol. Next Sunday Q&A session. Okay, it's the last Sunday of the month, and so you're all invited to bring your questions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Elmo. And thank you, John. And Sarita, also thank you for reading today. Most appreciated. Excellent class. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity again to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Medium's book, Chapter 3, Methodology. Spiritism is a genuine and serious study of all issues that interest humankind. We naturally want to share its expansion because it's within our innate spiritual consciousness to evolve and to share. There's no need to accept dogmas without deep exploration through reason. Learning continues and never ends. The confirmed materialists will also find openings to explore greater possibilities within their own timeline. Providence will guide. The Spiritist doctrine is a three-sided approach of philosophy, science, and moral teachings. Physical phenomenon also can assist us to free ourselves from pride, selfishness, and ego. We exercise our intelligence and free will to elevate moral consciousness and to protect against exaggeration and extremism. Goodness with humility and pure intent are always helpful actions and endeavors. We give thanks again to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us. And for our loved ones, the teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all those who are participants. We pray for inner peace and especially for world peace for those who are suffering in the physical world and also the spiritual worlds. We pray for SGNY and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, expand, and be always protected. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. And may we remind ourselves to go forth now as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity. So be it.
So be it.